Good attendance is vital for student success in school and in life. Coming up next on At Your Service. Join us. Today on At Your Service, we will be discussing school attendance and the implication it has on school performance. Welcome.
We have two special guests with us today. We have Nikki Johnson. She is a school counselor, and we have Stephanie Jones, and she is a pupil personnel worker. Welcome.
Thank you.
School attendance, that is our big topic for today. Stephanie, could you talk about what is the school law?
Sure. The school law currently says that any student between the ages of 5 and 16 years old must be enrolled in a school and attend every day.
Now, Maryland's changing that law, correct?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what is the changes and when do they go into effect?
Sure. While the ages are currently 5 through 16, effective July 1st, 2015, you must be 17 in order to withdraw your student. So as of now, if there's a 16-year-old who wants to pursue a different educational program, they can do that at 16. July 1st, 2015, you must be 17 in order to withdraw your child.
All right.
So if parents have students in Anne Arundel County, where would they go to find our specific attendance policy?
I think the best place to find the attendance policy is the parent handbook. The parent handbook has a wealth of information for parents to read as related to attendance or discipline or, lunch. So I think that's really like a good resource for parents overall, but definitely for any attendance concerns or any attendance things any questions they may have. So I think the parent handbook is probably the best place.
Now, where can they access that handbook?
I think the main office,
Okay.
of their school, and when in doubt, I say always contact the school counselor. That's the best person in your building to contact for information like that. So, but getting it from a secretary right in the main office is definitely something they can do.
What are the procedures if you do have a student that does need to miss school?
If they need to miss school, well, there are several reasons, legal reasons, the state recognizes for you missing school. Of course, if you're ill, we do not want ill children in school.
Right.
I personally go through the 3 B's. If you're bleeding, if you're barfing, or if you're burning up. So if you have a fever, please stay home. For 24 hours, you must be fever-free.
Okay.
If you, of course, if you hurt yourself playing sports, break a leg or something of that nature, please stay home. Go to the hospital, go to the doctor, seek medical treatment. And if you're vomiting, I believe our county has a policy that says you must remain vomit-free for 24 hours. So that's one legal reason. If you unfortunately experience a death of an immediate family member, the county does allow you to miss a day for the funeral. And if we hope that our students do not have court dates, but if there is a court hearing, unfortunately, for a lot of our middle school and high schoolers, they unfortunately have court cases. So if you have a court hearing, yes, that's a legal absence. But anything else is frowned upon and it's illegal.
And can I just ask you a little follow-up? So these codes that you were talking about, are they originated in Anne Arundel County, or do we look at some of the guidelines that the State Department of Education looks at with attendance, and then we craft those things into the parent handbook?
Yes. We look at the COMAR regulations and we look at the Maryland State Department of Education's policies. And each county has created their own. And I believe that the last bullet of each policy says the principal's discretion. So if you have a family emergency, I know I've had students who unfortunately have had home fires. Of course, that's not covered in the policy. Or if they've had a break-in, if there's a flood on your street individually and schools aren't closed, the principal has the authority to say that's an excused absence. So our policy is germane to Anne Arundel County, but it's based on what the Maryland State Department of Education has said.
Because many times we might get some of those phone calls, like, how is it, case by case, school by school. So it's nice to have parents know that there is a higher level it's coming from, a practice from COMAR regulation.
Yes. And it's not just,
I'm sorry. I think it's important, like as you were saying, you may get some of those phone calls, meaning counselors. I think it's important that parents know and have a relationship with someone in that particular school. A lot of times we automatically think it's going to be the classroom teacher, but just depending on level, elementary, middle, high school, it may not be the classroom teacher. Of course, we know when they get to the middle and high school level, you have multiple teachers, so there may not be one particular teacher they've built a strong relationship with, but I think communication is key. Parents need to call because sometimes they're not for sure, is this an excused absence? How should I handle this? What resources do I need to help my child or help my family so that they're not absent another day? So I think it's really, really important that parents reach out to someone at the school just to basically inform them, my child is absent today, this is the reason why. And then, of course, always rule of thumb is for parents to make sure they send a note in within 3 days of the student's return to the school. And then after 5 consecutive days or more, they do need a doctor's note. So that's something that some parents may not know, and I think that's just good for them to remember that. And then, of course, like I said before, the parent handbook states all of that so they can be aware of it.
Thank you. So what would be when a child is so ill that they're not able to come to a school on a continual basis? What can parents do when they have someone with a very serious medical issue?
Sure. We have several students who unfortunately suffer from diabetes, cancer, Crohn's disease. You name the illness, unfortunately, we have students who have them. There are 2 separate, and I know Nikki can speak better about this, but there are 2 separate homeschooling, home teaching programs. One is concurrent home teaching and the other is full-on home teaching.
And usually, I'm at the elementary level, so I'm not as familiar with the middle and high school, but I know at the elementary level when I have a student who has a medical issue, normally they contact the school counselor. Most of the time I will say they've called the principal first. At the elementary level, they probably called the principal if it's an illness where the child's going to be out for a prolonged period of time. So normally my principal or my administrator gets in contact with me, and then I pull the paperwork that just basically asks for a physician's note, which states that this illness is keeping that particular student from being able to attend school on a regular basis. After that, the paperwork is usually completed by the counselor, submitted to the Board of Education for approval, to the home teaching office, and then I'll be honest, the home teaching office does an excellent job of kind of taking it from there. So I think sometimes parents don't feel comfortable starting the process because they're just not sure what to do. And again, I think once they call the principal or the school counselor, basically there's not much that they have to do after providing that doctor's note. So that's what we mainly have dealt with on the elementary level.
So what if it's not an illness? What if they have to have some sort of surgery? What are there specific guidelines as well? Or does it follow the same guidelines as, let's say, a medical, like an illness?
Well, as we said before, everything, of course, excuse me, is a case-by-case basis. So if there's a student, for example, I have a young man who hurt himself playing football over the weekend, and he broke his arm, and surgery was done. It was almost an emergency, immediate situation. We pretty much follow whatever the doctor orders. Of course, that student would not be expected to participate physically in physical education class. But if the doctor says he is to be home with his arm elevated, whatever the note says, we at the school, we abide by whatever that is. So if he's going to be out for 2 weeks at home, we can get his teachers to organize and arrange work for him for his parents to come and pick it up. And we can, as I said before, concurrent home teaching, as Nikki spoke about, they can assign a teacher to go ahead to that home and meet with the child. I believe 6 hours a week.
Yes.
Okay.
So for parents at home, what is concurrent home teaching? How is that different from full-time home teaching?
Concurrent home teaching basically deals with whatever that, I would say, how would I explain, maybe short-term issue maybe, whether it's medical or psychological. There may be a reason why they just need to be home for a short period of time where they're not attending school, over 5 or 6 days or over a few weeks. It's not a long-term process where they're actually homeschooled. it's just for a short period of time. And most of the time, like I said, in my experience, it's been medical. It's been that a child has maybe chronic asthma, or we've had sickle cell. That's been a really big thing at our school on the elementary level. Sickle cell, the seasons with sickle cell and things like that. So most of the time it's just for I don't know how I'd say this, maybe a shorter, prolonged period of time.
Right.
It's not very long, like the full school year.
So they might have a chronic illness that does not go away. However, they just might need a few days to be home, and that they can receive those educational services.
Yes, so that they're not too behind when they do return to school.
I know on the website, I believe it's pretty clear what the criteria is as well. And there has to be a return to school plan, is that correct? It's not meant concurrent or home teaching to be a long-term for the rest of the school year or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And I know
as
that
well.
at the high school level that I think parents have sometimes the idea that you can earn a high school diploma, but typically most students that go on home teaching are unable to earn that high school diploma if they have such an illness that they're out for a really long time, and just trying to recoup those credits, it's deemed almost very unlikely.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I know that you'll have parents that will say, well, my child can make up the work at home. Why bother going to school? Do you hear that often? I mean,
I've heard that before.
Yes.
I think that, yes, they can make up the work. Most teachers will allow them to. But I think they're missing
what are they missing?
the valuable experience of education every day. I always refer to learning as a game. We refer to it in our counseling lessons as like the game of football. So you're showing up for the game of learning. If you're not there to practice with your team, if you're not there to hear the instructions that the coach, meaning your teacher, is giving every day, how do you really play that game? You're not a part of your team. I think they learn teamwork when they're there at school. They learn how to solve issues and problems. They learn responsibility. They learn respect for their teacher, for their classmates. They learn how to deal with issues that may not be favorable to them. You really can't learn that at home by yourself as you're sitting doing that work. And most of all, I think they get the fundamental skills and the strategies they need to be successful at whatever that content area is. So I think at least at the elementary level, and I know middle school and high school too, there's so much hands-on. Like we just have opened a STEM lab, so we have a STEM class at our school. There's so much hands-on. The children just love that class, and it helps to make science and math come alive. They're not going to get that same experience at home. So, children will be sick, and they will have to stay home from time to time. But I think coming to school is more of just an academic experience. It's more than that. It's a social experience, too. And I believe that children need the academic piece as well as the social piece to be successful adults, to be successful in college and in their career world. So it's important that they come and get both, not just the academic piece, but also the social skills that they need.
Yes, additionally, in agreement with you, for me, my understanding of school is not, yes, we are an institution of learning, but we are not here to only teach you basic, this is how you pass the next test. We are preparing you for life. The average person must go outside of the home to work. The average person must go outside of the home to seek medical care, to care for themselves, to grocery shop, to do basic daily living duties. And if you are used to doing everything at home, socially, you're not equipped for adulthood. So from probably our standpoint, as we're all mental health professionals here, we want to prepare you for adulthood so that you can thrive in society. So
exactly. Yeah, thank you very much. And we will be back in a few minutes.
Did you know that your local public library offers free early literacy programs specially designed for your baby, toddler, or preschoolers' growing needs in mind? Programs are offered at all Anne Arundel County Public Library branches every week year-round. We're committed to preparing children for school and for life. Visit www.aacpl.net for details.
Welcome back. Ladies, let's talk a little bit about research. Could you tell me a little bit about the research that is out there connecting attendance and student success in the classroom?
Sure. There was a preliminary study done in California that looked at kindergartners and first graders, and it looked at their absenteeism in those particular grades. And it basically compared where they were on a reading, where their reading level was by third grade. How many of those particular students were reading with proficiency? So the study stated that children who had 9 or more days absent in kindergarten and first grade combined were reading at about the proficiency level, about 64%. But then it dropped all the way to 17% for students who were in kindergarten and first grade and had missed 18 or more days for those particular years. So I think when we look at that, I mean, those are simple numbers, but you think what a drop in the percentage of children who are ready to read and ready to go when it comes to the fundamentals of reading, comprehension, being prepared for statewide tests and things like that, all because they just weren't available for learning. And kindergarten and first grade are your foundation years. It's where you're getting everything, academically and socially. Students need to be there because by third grade, I always say, they're kind of in the motion. They're rolling along. They're in the motion of what school is all about. But if they're missing so much time in kindergarten and first grade, they're going to miss whatever they need to be successful in those later grades. Thus, they're not successful in middle school, high school, and then most of them don't even end up in college.
Right, and there's huge gaps when students lose instruction.
You're right.
And then, you know, each year it's compounded.
Yes.
And so to see them, and those are the kids that you will see that don't, you know, persevere to make it through, and they feel like they're so far behind with their peers that could be a major issue. So Stephanie, what were some of your findings as a PPW worker that works with families and students around the idea of attendance? That whole piece on research that's out there.
Yes, there have been several studies, national and germane to the state of Maryland. And I'm thinking of one that was a national study where they looked at, speaking about the third graders, who this is the first year that you take standardized tests. And there have been some prisons that are building, states that are building prisons based on the test scores of third graders, and if they are below average, and you just pointed out 17%, which is heartbreaking, they are unfortunately building prisons because they believe this is the path that you're going to take. And to speak from a dropout perspective of it, the top 3 reasons why someone drops out of high school, if they make it to high school, are if there's a dropout already living in their home, if that student has already been retained, and lastly, if they have a history of truancy, because it creates a pattern of them not being used to their normal routine of getting up and going to school and making it a part of their daily life. So unfortunately, oftentimes it leads that student to drop out of school.
And that's why Maryland takes attendance so seriously.
Yes.
And that's why there are laws in place regarding that. Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about the legalities of attendance?
Sure. There are several consequences within this state and several other states about attendance. Anyone who is excessively absent, and we've already discussed the main reasons of why you're legally allowed to miss school, but if you are excessively absent, if you're missing more than 10%, which would be 18 days within a school year, that's excessive. And I know a lot of us would say, well, 18 days, that's even more than we should even look at. Your case could be, your situation could be referred to court, where there are 2 separate consequences. One is a fine of $50 for every 1 day that you're out of school. So if you miss 10 days of school, that's a $500 fine. If you are in jail, you could be jailed 10 days for every 1 day that you're out. So if you miss 1 day, that's 10 days in jail. And I've seen both happen to parents. I have seen parents unfortunately arrested in court for failure to send your child to school. I believe that is the charge that you get.
Wow. Because students are out of the schoolhouse and not learning with their peer group, what are some of social, emotional, or maybe developmental issues that arise that you see that maybe maybe at each developmental level. I know, Nikki, you're at the elementary, and Stephanie, you're probably all three. So you can see some of the things that develop with these children and these families.
I think at the elementary level, when I think of the social emotional impact of students who just don't attend school regularly, I just feel like they feel left out. I feel like they don't know where their place is when they are in school. It's hard for them to catch up. A lot of them are not very verbal or vocal, where they feel like they can kind of come back in and just jump back into where they were. So I think sometimes it makes them feel like they're not a part of that learning family. I think teachers, especially at the elementary level, do a wonderful job of making all of the children feel welcome. And of course, many of our students who have absenteeism problems, we know a little bit about what that family background is, so we're probably stepping up a little bit more to try to help that student get back into the learning groove of everything. But I think they just don't feel a part. I mean, and how can you feel a part if you're not there on a consistent basis? I think they also feel really lost. They miss a lot of instruction, so that can also cause them to perform lower on tests. They can perform lower when it comes to their grades. And how embarrassing for them if the only reason you're performing lower is because you're just not getting the necessary information, not because of ability or anything. It's hard for them. So I think the biggest thing is just feeling like they can fit in and feeling like they're a part of the learning environment. Because when you miss so much, when you jump back in, you're not sure where to start sometimes. So,
what are some common student excuses that you have seen that parents just happen to just continually give into, that again, you know, they may have good intentions of giving into them because they think that maybe they're doing the right thing or they're trying to give their child a break, but unfortunately it starts the negative routines and the negative patterns. I know as a pupil personnel worker and a school counselor, you've seen it often. Can you give some examples?
Yes, I've heard lots of different stories. I've had some parents say, well, I didn't, you know, it's only kindergarten. I did not think it was a big deal. When I went to school, kindergarten wasn't a big deal. I've heard on all three levels, elementary, middle, and high, oh, I give my child a mental health day once a month, and that's not including the days that the student may miss for legitimate illness. We've had situations of, oh, it's the brother's homecoming, so he had to stay home to help his brother or sister get ready for homecoming. He has a zit on his face. He has a bad hair day. You name the situation. We're going to Disney World. You name the situation. I know I've heard, I'm sure you've heard several different stories of why they feel it's legitimate to the family for the students to stay home.
When I think about families and parents, I think some parents really struggle with their child depending on the level. You know, I look at elementary and I see that attachment piece at the middle school. It could be the middle schooler developmentally might be struggling with some things, or even at the high school level. And it's very difficult for parents when the student is as big as they are, to try to, you know, for me to try to make a 6-foot adolescent go to school, it's a struggle. What are some ideas and some strategies that you think of when working with families?
I think at the elementary level, and I mean, I guess this could be the middle school and high school level as well, I think modeling is really, really key. If students are able to see family members, even if it's not just mom and dad, but even big brother, big sister, you know, aunt or grandmom or grandpa, if we see that they are valuing going to work on time, valuing making sure they get to whatever their family functions may be on time and are there, and then when they can't go, you know, making sure that they contact whoever it is to let them know they're not coming or whatever it may be, I think that models for young students exactly what they need to do. Kids are always watching. I always say that. They're always watching. So parents may not think that their children are paying attention to what they're doing or what they're saying, but I think modeling good attendance in your home for whatever that particular thing you're going to attend is definitely key for parents.
I think also maintaining open lines of communication so that the student knows my mom is in contact with my school, and the parent knows if anything is going on, good or bad, the counselor, the pupil personnel worker, the classroom teacher will be in contact with me to make sure everyone is on the same page. that helps the student maintain consistency and understand, okay, so that works.
So when looking at students that, any school level, it's really finding out what the actual root cause is. And so how could a PPW worker or a school counselor help work with the family to identify?
I think the families, the parents, and I say families just because you never know exactly who's in the home raising that particular child. I think relationships are key. It's important that we form relationships with our families. It's not just that they were absent, we call home, we send the note, that's it. There's an underlying cause why they are absent, whether it's the fact that mom and dad are working late or working early and they're getting themselves up and ready for school, whether it's food is an issue or transportation is an issue, their basic needs are not being met. I think that people aren't going to reveal that information if they're not comfortable with the person they're revealing it to. So I think it's very important for many of the student services employees at your school, meaning your school counselor, your administrator, your school psychologist, your PPW. I think all of those people need to reach out as much as they can to form relationships with families, because it can be a little bit of pride involved and a little bit of embarrassment about certain situations, and families need to feel comfortable talking about whatever that root cause of attendance issues really is.
And I think that when you have a student where you may be in middle school by now, the child may be in middle school or high school by now, and the parent feels that, well, the school only calls when something's wrong. I only get a letter if he's truant. I only get an email or a phone call if something negative is going on. I think that the open lines of communication and someone taking the time to say, well, let me call and share that Johnny had a good day today, or Susie did excellent at lunch. She helped a student with a broken arm, or anything that's positive. That'll help the parent feel that, okay, you are on my side. You're not just, like you said, pride in the way. You're not trying to bash me or judge me, but yet you're here to help support my family as a unit.
And that's really important, because parents really, many of them we've worked with, we know struggle.
Yes.
We struggle with that skill set and what can you do, and creating some strategies and putting some supports in place for their child and their family. So when, for the parents that are watching today, or for the families, that they do have some concerns and they're not sure what is the root cause. They might not even, think about, sometimes they might not know. From the one thing watching the show today, where can they go, and what are some of the resources that are available to them?
I think their school administrator is always available. I mentioned a few minutes ago the student services team, meaning your school administrator, your pupil personnel worker, your school counselor, school psychologist, and I always say this, at least at the elementary level, your classroom teacher. They can steer you in the direction that's needed. Most elementary schools, if not all, have a full-time counselor, so at least you know that counselor's there. There are multiple counselors on the middle school and high school level. I know as a pupil personnel worker, you're split between various schools, so you're not readily available every day. But I know the counselor and the administrator can get in touch with the pupil personnel workers to give them the family's name, and you guys are great about touching base with all families that need support. So.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Nikki and Stephanie, today for being our speakers, because this is very important for students and families, especially if there are some concerns and issues. We truly appreciate your time, that you can support the community by coming out and providing that kind of knowledge. And we thank you for watching At Your Service today. Join us next time.
Hi, I'm Jody Rissy. When's the last time you watched Food for Thought? Make sure you tune in to aacps-tv and watch Food for Thought. I have so many guests on the show. We talk about partnerships here in Anne Arundel County as well as across the state. We talk about breakfast, lunch, even dinner, and our summer programs. Fruits and vegetables are always a topic. We want to make sure that you're having fruits and vegetables at home just like we have them here in school in Anne Arundel County. Make sure you keep watching AACPS TV and make sure you don't miss the next episode of Food for Thought.